Hello everyone and welcome to the Deercast. Today we're going to be talking about aging deer. So when you've got a deer in your sights or you've got a deer on the deck having just shot it, how do you tell how old it is? Well, there are a number of different methods. First one that we tend to use is looking at the body shape and size. So an older animal will have a much thicker, broader, sort of more rounded body to it, generally speaking, whereas a younger animal will have a sort of more kind of like lean body to it, and it'll be kind of less full, if that makes sense. If you sort of see, if you look in any literature and you might be able to see pictures of a young and an old animal side by side, you'll sort of immediately see what we mean. The other one is by looking at the face as well, so sort of include that in the body assessment category. So, and the same pretty much applies, that the older an animal is, the kind of thicker, broader and better set their face will look, whereas the younger animals have more sort of angular, narrow faces. You can check once the deer is dead, looking at the lower jaw. So this one here is taken from a muntjac, and you can tell partly by kind of the wear on the teeth. So the back teeth tend to remain the sharpest for the longest, but you can kind of, once you're quite experienced, you can start to tell from some of these front teeth as to how well worn they are. You can also, one sort of quite easy, quick way to do it is the third tooth back, which is called PM3, so premolar 3, is whether it's got a singular or triple cusp to it, or point to it. So this bit here, you might just be able to make that out in the video. So around 12/13 months, that tends to change from a triple cusp to a single cusp in most of the deer species. So that's quite an easy way of telling if you've got quite a juvenile animal and you're not quite sure. You'll see with old animals that their teeth sort of almost start to go completely flat, particularly along the front. So that's quite a good way of telling. The obvious way that a lot of us tend to use is by antlers. So young roebuck, you can probably see why we culled it. But I mean, apart from just the general size of the antlers, I mean, the rule is true apart from when animals start to go back, that the taller and the thicker the antlers are, typically the older that animal is. There are some exceptions to that rule. But if we compare this very young animal to this much more mature animal, you can see, yes, the rule is sort of true about thicker, taller, etc. But there are some also other quite key characteristics to have a look at. First one is in relation to pedicle height. So when we're talking about pedicles, or the length of the pedicle, is this bit here. So the older an animal, the shorter those tend to get, which means that the coronets, and it's easier to see on this older animal, tend to get closer to the skull. You can also see with this one that they're starting to sort of slope off the head, which again tends to happen in older animals. So instead of the coronets being at a sort of flat angle to the head, they're starting to look like they're almost like sloping, as if they're melting off the top of the head. And that's another, again, good, quite easy way to tell. As I said, the general rule applies, especially with this buck, nice big thick animal, so you can tell he was an old animal. This one actually was starting to go back, particularly you can sort of see on this side. The year before we culled him, he was actually a much better buck than he was this year, hence the decision to take him. So there you are, sort of quick and easy ways to identify the age of deer out in the field. The reason it's important to do is partly to build up your own knowledge, but partly when you're trying to fulfill a cull plan and you've got a certain number of animals in a young, juvenile, middle-aged or old category to cull, unless you know how old the animals are that you are culling, you don't know which category they necessarily fall into. There are lots of other different ways to age animals. Some people will say based on the thickness of the skull at certain different points, which, to be honest, I don't particularly have any experience with. I know some others can be very accurate with them, and I'm sure there are other ways out there that some of you will know about. We'd love to hear from you, so if you do know other ways, please leave a comment below, and as per usual, please remember to comment, like and subscribe.